Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and welcome to PlayLoad. This is all my video game pickups for the month of February 2020, and man, tiring month, as I'll get into further on in this video, but the vast majority of my pickups in this video come from the very beginning of the month when I went to the Missouri Game Con Junior, and wow, does that feel like a long time ago. Like, that does not feel like a couple of weeks ago, because in the interim, I went kind of all over the place, and even back to places I had just been to. It was very strange. I'll get to that when I get there. But as far as video games go, almost everything on this table came from the Missouri Game Con Junior, which the Missouri Game Con is a great convention that happens down in St. Louis. I've been a guest there every single year since it's existed. It's usually in like August. In fact, there's another one this August, I think. And but on the flip side, they decided to just do like this, essentially like a halfway con in this month. They called Mo Game Con Junior, which is basically just a game swap. And I was a very, very last minute addition as some semblance of a guest. It's just like, oh yeah, we'll have that guy again. But so that was cool. Thank you to them for having me there. But yeah, really all I did was just kind of hang around, and I got some cool stuff. Now, I didn't actually buy all that much. Well, okay, that's not entirely true. You'll see. But I got a lot of free stuff too, which was interesting. But the first thing I got at the convention was this. Now, this may look unassuming. It's Super Mario Bros. 3 for the NES. You really didn't have that game before, Adam? I thought you had a ton of stuff. Why would you not have one of the most iconic, obvious game titles ever? Oh, I most certainly have this game, but I didn't have this version. So here's the thing about this. I only found out about this at like Portland Retro Game Expo last year. Super Mario Bros. 3, there's actually two versions. One, I don't know if you'd call it a printing error or just a different variant. I'm under the impression it was more of an error. But if you look at the front, you'll notice the word Bros is in the lower left. Whereas on the regular version, it was on the bottom right. Most versions have it on the bottom right. Now, that doesn't make it super valuable or anything. The regular version is like a $10 game, and this edition is more like a $30 game. I mean, that's more, sure, but it's nothing exceptional. I ended up getting this for $5, so that was cool to add as just some sort of variant. And it's not super uncommon. I've probably just missed it a million times over. In fact, at this very convention, once I was aware of it, I think I saw it 3 times, including this. So it's not super, super uncommon or anything. It's just not as common. But cool to pick that up. Now, towards the end of the convention, there's a guy named Chuck who runs the convention. He's one of the con heads. And he had a couple of tables of stuff that he was selling, and he was in a very much everything must go type of vibe. And when I say that, I mean everything must go. Because near the very end of the convention, he just made an announcement that everything on his tables was just free to take, because he just didn't want any of it anymore. So I was around the table at the time, and so I had the opportunity to just kind of grab whatever I wanted, but I also was like, I'm not going to just take stuff to take stuff. I want to take stuff that I at least have some interest in. So I wouldn't take like doubles of things that I already own or something like that. Just kind of either games that I thought were interesting or items I thought were interesting for one reason or another. So first and foremost, I actually grabbed this. This is X-Men Origins Wolverine Uncaged Edition for the Xbox 360. Probably not a very good game. But at the same time, because it's a horrible film, like, wow, level bad. But if this game is even remotely interesting, even worth 5 minutes of entertainment, then it's already better than the terrible movie in which it derives its name. But yeah, so that was just a freebie grab right there. I also grabbed the only Atari 2600 game he had, which was Strawberry Shortcake Musical Matchups, which of course, yeah, I'm not even going to get 5 minutes out of this thing for sure. Strawberry Shortcake musical matchups. There's no universe in which this becomes my new jam. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to be playing this for very long. But still, it was just cool to add something to the Atari 2600 collection. One of the more oddball items he had that he was giving away was some soundtracks. Now, the first one really kind of broke my heart. He had this, the Grand Theft Auto Vice City official soundtrack box set, and you're thinking like, dude, that's a score, that's awesome. It would be, except like half the CDs are missing. And he told me that up front, and I was like, still, I'll take it, you know, because whatever, you still have half of it, but still, is not nearly as cool of a pickup as you would think. Neat nonetheless. But I did find he did have 2 other ones, and one of them was very interesting to say the least that you'll see later. Stubbs the Zombie soundtrack. This was an original Xbox game, one of the less common ones. I had no idea that it had an official soundtrack for it, but it did, and it's mine, all for free. And the other one that was pretty cool, again, another strange one where you wouldn't think it would have one, is the official soundtrack for Super Mario Kart. But there it is. I've got the Super Mario Kart for SNES soundtrack right there. So thank you, Chuck, for that. He also had a couple other random games here. A Bug's Life for PS1. I remember when this came out, like, this game was on, like, every platform under the sun, man. It was kind of insane how many different versions of this there was at the time. Not that I guess that's particularly uncommon. I guess what was more interesting about it at that time is A Bug's Life needs a game. So they make a version for one console and a totally different version for another console and a totally different version for another platform and so on and so forth. So it was just kind of insane how many different versions there were. But whatever. I like this movie. I know it wasn't Pixar's best, but I still liked it. This was an odd one because nobody was taking this. And he was just like, guys, seriously, somebody take this because I can't believe no one's taking this. This is a Game Boy Advance in like the case. Carrying case. So, and it came with a few different games. I believe this clearly was the property of a girl at some point, because you got two of these Game Boy Advance videos, Dora the Explorer Volume 1, which is like an episode of the shows, and then Nicktoons Collection Volume 1. Which those carts are interesting because I think they were specifically designed to only work on Game Boy Advances, so like they do not work on Game Boy Players or anything like that. Couple other Game Boy Advance games. Barbie's Island, the Island Princess. Hilariously, I didn't remember these were in here. Strawberry Shortcake for Game Boy Advance. Strawberry Shortcake Summertime Adventure. Dude, this franchise is multi-gen, okay? Like, don't knock it. So it's got that. Then a couple of original Game Boy games. We got, these are more appropriate. We've got Mickey Mouse, Magical Wands, and Mickey's Dangerous Chase. We got both of those in there. No other additional games, and inside the console itself, or portable itself, Game Boy Advance, the Arctic Crystal one. Interestingly, not like the pink one or anything like that. It has one game in there, and that would be Magical Quest 2, starring Mickey and Minnie. So there you go. There's three Game Boy Advance games, two of which are like little Barbie Strawberry Short things, and then a couple of Mickey Mouse games. But yeah, free Game Boy Advance, can't knock that. So I'll put that off to the side, so thank you very much, Chuck, for that. Now, as we were wrapping up, there was a point where the convention was kind of winding down. And almost every single person was gone. All the tables had been completely dismantled. There was only like one guy left walking around because he was another table owner and he was just kind of doing his final rounds of putting stuff away, as well as myself, Chuck, who was the guy who provided all this stuff, and my buddy Jake, who's another one of the dudes who runs the convention. And as we're at that phase, there's like 4 people in the room. Chuck just notices, this box, I forgot to put this out. So he just lifts up this box full of just Blu-rays. The first person who had access to it was this guy Ralph I just mentioned. So he grabbed a bunch of stuff like immediately, but they were just like, yeah, take whatever you want. So I just grabbed a stack of stuff that I thought was interesting. Monsters University on Blu-ray, I Am Legend on Blu-ray, Suicide Squad in 4K. This would be my only Ultra HD, by the way. I don't have any other 4K Ultra HD Blu-rays. Justice League Crisis on 2 Earths, Batman Bad Blood, which I have not seen, So I Married an Axe Murderer, the Mike Myers one, like pre-Austin Powers, Seasons 1 and 2 on DVD of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, a sealed copy of 10 Cloverfield Lane, a sealed copy of a movie called Money Monster. I haven't seen either of these. And then a Blu-ray, again, of Guardians of the Galaxy. So, yeah, pretty neat to get a nice stack of Blu-rays and stuff. Again, all of this was free. At this point, the only thing I had paid for was Mario 3, which was $5. So, pretty good. However, my financial luck, if you will, did not necessarily last because I decided to start buying some stuff. I've mentioned this before. One of the things I'm going for is a complete original Xbox set. And I've just been kind of slowly chipping away at it. It hasn't been that high of a priority for me anymore. But I still, you know, occasionally go at it from time to time. Usually at conventions like this because it's just kind of the best place to get stuff. So I got a nice stack of original Xbox games that I didn't have. And one in particular that is special and kind of hilariously well timed. But first up, we got Driver 3, Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter, Ford Racing 2, Freaky Flyers, Samurai Warriors, Spy Hunter 2, and Stubbs the Zombie, Rebel Without a Pulse. You know, the one that I found the soundtrack for, like, at the exact same thing. Although I got the soundtrack later. So it's just kind of hilarious that both of these ended up coming out at the same convention at the same time from two totally different sources. The thing is, the Xbox games, as I recall, were mostly just in a box of just miscellaneous, just junk, you know, Xbox games, because that's basically how Xbox games are presented now, is just, here's a box full of just crap. Take whatever for X amount. This was in there for some reason. It probably shouldn't have been. I'm sure that was a mistake, but you know, I just grabbed it along with everything else, and now it's mine. So there you go. Because this is the less common Xbox game, which in original Xbox terms is not that big of a deal, because most games on an original Xbox are not really worth anything, and a handful that are we're like, ooh, it's $40. That's almost the extreme end of the spectrum for the original Xbox. It's not a particularly expensive console. So there you go. The other thing I got, though, which was surprising to me, was, well, okay, so when I went in there, there was one table that had this one particular item that everyone was eyeing. Like, everyone would stop and look at it. This guy named Kurt had a Neo Geo CD along with like a box of games. And you don't really see Neo Geo CD stuff that often in North America, and much less at a con like that, because usually that's a place to get North American stuff. Logically so, it's in the US, and it's in the Midwest no less. So he had this cool import system. Now, I don't need the console, I've got that. But I have been trying to get as many Neo Geo CD games as I can get my hands on. But I'm also, let's just say I'm spoiled, because I get sent to Japan enough, or I get to go to Japan enough, that I really only want to buy stuff at Japanese prices or less. Like, because I'm not going to pay import duties or fees, not like, I mean, from a legal standpoint. I mean, like, the guy who bought it from Japan has to sell it for more in the US to make a profit on what he paid for it. Logical economics. But I have no desire to pay that inflation, knowing full well I'll probably be in Japan and be able to find it there eventually myself. So that was kind of always my position on imports, is I don't really buy imports at conventions for those reasons. In fact, generally I laugh at the import sections, because I'll see like Famicom games like, oh, this game's $10. I'm like, dude, that is a $1 game all day long in Japan. I get why they do it, but that's why I have no reason to pay for that. So in this case, it was surprising, because you don't usually see that many Neo Geo CD games. But Kurt was a really cool dude. You know, I did this thing where I would kind of circle around, because I just kind of keep wanting to check on his stuff. And then, you know, at first I'm just like, oh, that's cool, you got all this cool stuff, well, see ya. Then I come back and I'm like, do you mind if I organize it so that I separate all the games I have from all the ones I don't have? You know, like, sure. And then just keep kind of going around until we reach a point where he ended up selling all, I'm not going to say what the prices were, because I still paid more money than I should have as a person. Like, it was not smart to spend the amount of money that I spent on these games. But at the same time, every single one of these games, definitely I came in under the sub-Japanese price, which is the only reason I pulled the trigger. I would not have found these games at these prices even in Japan. So with that said, I was willing to pull the trigger. It was more of a, it was better for me than it was for Kurt, but at the same time, Kurt told me straight up he's just looking to unload all of it, because he's trying to move into like AVS territory. He wants more of that stuff. So thank you, Kurt, for what you did. But let's talk about which games we actually got. Baseball Stars Professional, Dunk Dream. I honestly do not remember. I will put the name up on screen. Mutation Nation. Bang Bang Busters. This one's interesting, because this is actually an independent game. I actually did an entire video of this game, but for the Dreamcast. There are a few independent releases for the Neo Geo Neo Geo CD. Not many. Last Hope is one of them. Obviously, this is one of them. I don't know how many others there are. But I figured I'm never going to see that again in person, even in Japan, like, certainly, because it's more of a Western release. So definitely got that one. I think this is actually the first thing I picked up, like, straight up. I think I just bought this one by itself before we went around and did deals. Viewpoint, King of the Monsters 2, Galaxy Fight, and Ghost Pilots. So obviously wasn't the smartest thing to do to buy that many games in particular, because, whatever, but to be honest, it was a better deal than I was ever really going to find in Japan, and so I'm happy to have done it. My wallet isn't, but I am. So, yeah. So that was it for all the stuff at the Missouri Game Con, and like I said, that's the vast majority of content in this video. Now, this is very interesting. I got the opportunity to go out to Honolulu at that point, and I got to hang out with a buddy of mine named Mikkel. I'm sure a lot of you guys, well, possibly a lot of you guys know him. He's another YouTuber. He goes by the name Mikkel Supernova. Now, the truth is, I was there because my mom wanted an excuse to go to the sun, because we live in Chicago and it's brutal here in the winter, so she wanted to go. So she was all too happy to spend my miles. And we went down to Honolulu, and we hung out with Mikkel. He drove us around. Hell of a nice guy. So what we ended up doing while we were in Honolulu is we decided, there's not much of a retro game scene in Honolulu, but yeah, so we decided to hit up every GameStop on the island. Yeah, it's something to do. On the island of Oahu specifically. And when we were doing that, we didn't really have that much of an objective, although we kind of invented one, which was, for those who were into Shenmue 3, if you pre-ordered at GameStop, you would find these little Shenmue 3 medallions. They come in a little box, and it's just a replica medallion of the Dragon and Phoenix mirrors. If you pre-ordered the game at GameStop, they would give you one of these. However, I don't know if they just made too many of them or what, or just now a lot of people are picking them up. I don't know. But if you go into a GameStop, if they still have these, just ask for it. They'll just give it to you. You can just take it, because they're at the point where they're just throwing these away. So we made it our little mission to drive all around Oahu and go to every single GameStop, with the exception there's two on military bases. There's one at Pearl Harbor and there's one at a different base. You can't go to those unless you're military. But every other one that was open to the public, we went to those. And we just went ahead and asked for these. We ended up walking away with 4 of them. So at some point I'm going to do a giveaway of some kind for these. But for now, yeah, they're safe. They're secured with a Shenmue nerd who will take care of them and get them into people's hands eventually. But that said, I wasn't expecting to actually find anything I wanted to buy. But there was this one store. There's not, like I said, there's not much in the way of retro gaming there. But we went to this one that kind of surprised both of us. It was the only GameStop on the entire island that we found that had any sort of retro game section. When I say retro game, I don't mean like 6th gen onwards, or even 7th gen onwards, which is usually the case at a GameStop. They actually had like 4th gen stuff. Like they had a Super Nintendo. Like we were just kind of stunned that they had any of that stuff. So Mikkel actually got a couple of GameCube games, but I got something that just caught my eye because I thought it was hilarious. This game called Mayhem for the Xbox 360. Now, looking at it, it does not look like that great of a game. It's completely in black and white, but what caught my eye was the fact that this is a 3D based game. So it actually includes these like 3D goggles or glasses, you know, the red and blue ones. And the idea is, oh, you can play it on any television. This was definitely at the height of when like 3D gaming, you know, the Avatar era was like at its peak, and that was what they were banking on. But considering these things, the glasses are like sealed up, the game looks completely unplayed. I'll bet you this sucks. I'll bet somebody popped it in and was like, this is garbage, and never played it again, and eventually just sold it to GameStop, and it just sat there. Because it was only a couple dollars too. So I got it just kind of for the laugh factor. That's pretty much it. And the other thing I got, which caught my eye, was this. This is the Banjo-Kazooie Totaku figure. Totaku is basically doing these like amiibo clones for video game characters that aren't going to get amiibos. The only other one I have is Conker, which both that and Banjo-Kazooie are Rare characters by the company Rare, which was one-time partnership with Nintendo. The reason I wanted both of these is they kind of feel like they are basically Nintendo characters that are no longer Nintendo characters, and I just kind of wanted them to go with any sort of amiibo set. The irony is I think Banjo-Kazooie, because now he's in Smash, will probably end up with an amiibo at some point. But that said, it's just kind of cool to see. So I just saw it and I just grabbed it. I didn't think much of it. It's a $15 figure, whatever. But what was interesting is I sent pictures of it to a couple of my buddies, and they're like, "Dude, how did you find one?" Because apparently this is like the really hard one to find. No idea. Didn't see it again. Wasn't actively looking for it, but did not see it since. But yeah, apparently that's going for like $40 online. So hey, cool. I have no intention of selling it or anything, but it's just kind of cool to have it, I guess. Now, after that, I ended up getting a game for the Sega Master System, which was not expected at all. Now, Oahu actually has 2 book-offs on it. Now, if you watch my channel for any length of time, you've probably heard of Book Off. Book Off is a Japanese bookstore that also has a large video game section. Now, there's tons of them in Japan. You can throw a rock and hit one, but there's only a couple of them outside of Japan. There's one in Paris. I've been to that one. There's one in Manhattan. I've been to that one. There's a few in California. Funny enough, never been to any of those. And then there's at least 2 on Oahu. I've been to both of those, and I don't know if there's others in the rest of Hawaii and the other islands, but at least on Oahu there's 2. And I went to both of those. In this case, we went to the one that's inside of a Don Quixote, which is also a Japanese store. And they had a decent little retro game section, certainly better than anything else I had seen in Oahu. And much to my surprise, one of them was a Sega Master System game. It was Strider. Now, I don't usually buy Sega Master System stuff. It's just not really on my list. But this was a boxed copy of Strider for pretty cheap. I want to say it was like 15 bucks, which for Strider on Master System is pretty good. So I was like, what the hell, you know, support local, I guess. So I went ahead and I got it. So that was kind of it. Now, this is where life gets truly, truly insane. So I had to go back to Chicago at that point because I was supposed to go off to London. I was supposed to go to London for a Sega thing, Mega Drive Mondays or something. We were going to do some streaming thing. And unfortunately, our plans were completely screwed up by Hurricane Dennis, or as some people in the UK have referred to it as just Tropical Storm Dennis, correcting me. I don't know. Either way, flights weren't going to the UK. And so as a result, that got canceled. So United Airlines was cool enough to give me rerouting abilities, or at least some, I'm not going to say a refund, but basically more or less like credit to do something else with that. So what I ended up doing with it was just shortly after that, a buddy of mine wanted to go out to take a vacation. He just wanted to get away from here, get away from the weather. And he's like, you keep talking about this place Guam, man. Like, we should go to Guam. And I was like, sitting on a bunch of credit, I can't do anything else with it, let's go. And so we ended up going out to Guam. So in order to do that, though, to avoid Asia right now, because let's keep it real, that's a thing, the other route is to go through Honolulu. So we ended up going back to Honolulu. I flew from Chicago to Honolulu, back to Chicago, back to Honolulu in a week. It's exhausting. But I get back to Honolulu and I message Mikkel again. I'm like, guess who's back? And he was like, what up? And they picked us up at the airport. We got to spend a night at his house. He was cool enough to put us up, which is a huge thing down in Oahu, man. Honolulu is expensive. So to get a free place to crash for a night, that's pretty nice. Anyway, so we did that. And then we hopped out to Guam the next day. And Guam, I've talked about it a lot on this channel, so I'll kind of keep it brief. But I really like Guam. I think that's like America's lost treasure. It's this island in the South Pacific. It's fantastic. I highly recommend it ever going there if you ever get the chance, which obviously not a lot of people do. And it's mostly prohibitively expensive. I was only able to do it because either I had to go through it or I just had situations like this where there's miles or credit or something I can spend to go there. But the island itself is not particularly expensive in a lot of ways. Like there's cheap way to get residency, and then I have a buddy named Brian who lives out there who just drives us around and hangs out with us, who also is a fan of this channel. So what up, man? But in this case, I didn't pick up any video games there. But one thing I did do is one of my favorite coffee places, if not my favorite coffee place in the world, is there. It's a place called Coffee Slut. Yes, you heard that correctly. And that place perfectly describes me, like, to a T. So I would just go in there and buy coffee, whatever. But at one point I'm hanging with my buddy Matt and my buddy Brian, and we just drive over there just to get some coffees. It was Matt's first time in there, and Brian's a local, so they knew who he was. So we just go in and just order coffees, and we ended up just chatting up the girl working behind the counter for a while, and then we ended up chatting up the boss dude who runs the place for a while, and just chatting with him back and forth. And he liked the cut of our jib, if you will. So he gave us some stickers. So I got a bunch of stickers for Coffee Slut, and he also gave me this, just a free bag of coffee, his own roasters, Spike Coffee Roasters, his own brand. So the beans are grown in Brazil, but this is actually roasted in Guam. Start every cup with a day of Spike, and it's just got a picture of Guam, so made in Guam. So very cool to have that. Other interesting thing we did while we were out there, though, is there's another American territory out there called the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands. And mostly it's just known for World War II. My buddy Matt really wanted to check it out, so we got some cheap flights and we just hopped over to Saipan. Which is, again, is best known for, hey, the Japanese invaded this during World War II. Well, technically it was theirs prior to World War II. And they built bunkers, and then we had to go in and fight them during the war. You know, tragic, sad history, but that's what it is. So we just kind of went around the island, and Matt rented a car, which was really cheap, surprisingly, and we just ran all around the island checking out all these different sites. So even though this really has nothing to do with video games, I didn't pick up any games there. I thought, hey, if anybody's ever curious what it's like to be in a really strange part of America, because I remind you, this island that you're looking at in this footage is part of the United States of America. This is a U.S. territory. This is only a few congressional votes away and a presidential signature from becoming a state. But yeah, it's just this piece of America that Americans don't really go to. But one thing I gotta say that was video game related there, that made me super patriotic, is other than all the national parks and the flags, like that's all the stuff that you expect. What made me truly patriotic is we went to the American Memorial Museum, which is a national park that has, you know, like a history of the war on the island, all this stuff, you know, that you would expect of something like that. We get to the park, and as we're standing there about to go in the entrance, we see a bunch of kids show up, like kids who are very much local. I believe they would be considered Chamorros. Chamorros, like the people of Guam, and correct my ignorance if I'm wrong there, but I think they would also be referred to as Chamorro, or people who live on the island of Saipan. And we see a bunch of them, and you know, there was no interaction between us directly. It's just you're just watching them from a distance, and they start talking, and they all have very basic Midwestern accents. Like they sound like they're from Nebraska. You know, like it's just straight up accents. And you know what they're there in the park to do? You'll have to forgive my ignorance on Pokemon Go, but one of them yells out like, "Dude, I found a rare," like names the Pokemon, and I knew immediately what they're doing. And they're all just descending upon finding this Pokemon in Pokemon Go, and they're all just walking around the park doing that. And I was like, yes, these are my people, because like the kids in Manhattan are doing the same thing, you know what I mean? Like that's just what American kids would be doing. Any part of America, it's just, dude, I found the Pokemon, let's go. So we go into it was hilarious because there was just a couple of these kids like doing this. We go into the memorial, we walk all around, we look at the history of it, you know, just some of the sites like the battle sites and some pieces of equipment, all that kind of stuff that they had picked up. And there was also a movie that they would show us that was just kind of like, here's the history of everything that happened during the Battle of Saipan, blah, 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 blah. And after we finish all that, we leave the park and we just go back outside just to kind of, you know, walk around and see some more stuff. Now the park is packed, and it's packed with tons of people, all of which have descended upon this park because there's this one rare Pokemon walking around in that park and they got to find it. And I'm like, man, I'm patriotic right now, just because it's like it's not just the symbolism of where you are and what it stands for, all that. It's the fact that the people there are doing exactly the same thing as people on the mainland. They're just like, dude, the Pokemon, let's go. So that was the only video game type of thing that happened to me in Saipan. But Saipan was a trip, man. It was just a weird place to be. Then we went back to Guam, we finished that out, then came back, and we actually ended up coming back through Honolulu, so Mikkel picked us up again. We hung out with him for another night, and I taught him about the best udon place that exists in the world. It's called Marukame Udon in Honolulu and Waikiki Beach. If you ever get the chance, go to it. It is the greatest udon on the planet, and I included Japan, because I've been to a lot of udon places in Japan. Nothing even touches this that I've ever found, so highly recommend that. Again, not video game related, but it's something to do. And I get back here to Chicago, and then I have to bounce up to Madison, Wisconsin to work on a very special video, which you guys will be seeing very soon. And now I'm back here working on this. So that would be the majority of my video game pickups, except for two last little stragglers. Right before one of these little adventures, a package showed up, and this is what was inside. This is from the Shenmue 3 Kickstarter campaign, specifically a signature of Yu Suzuki on some Shenmue 3 artwork. This is very neat. I've seen a lot of people who are getting these things, and this was from the original Kickstarter support that I pledged for the game. What's kind of hilarious about this would probably be much more exciting and insane to me in a different time. But now that I've met Yu Suzuki like 7 or 8 times, the dude knows my name, you know, like it's just cool, but it's like I've got his signature on a bunch of stuff now, so it's like, that's cool, but it's not quite as like, oh, as it once would have been. I mean, I was even giving away his signature on stuff that, you know, as prizes to people, so yeah, it's just cool to add that nevertheless. Huge Shenmue fan, obviously. Now there's one last item that I should circle back to. There was one thing I got at the Missouri Game Con Junior that I have not included in this video because it's such a strange item, but it's about to come out. It was something that I saw there, and I kept circling back around, just being like, did anybody buy it yet? Should I buy it? Did anybody buy it? You know, just trying to find out. And like, just as it was all closing up, I go over and talk to the guy, and I'm just like, you know, because he was asking like $200 for it, and I wasn't willing to pay that. But he's like, I'll sell it to you for $100. I probably shouldn't have done it, but I did it. I pulled the trigger on this. This is a Toshiba Nuon. Now, am I stupid for getting this? Probably. If you're not familiar with what this is a version of the Samsung Nuon. The Samsung Nuon is a very ill-fated 6th generation game console, and I would use that term very loosely. It was essentially a video game console inside of a DVD player. And there were a few different models of it, Samsung's being the most well-known. This is the version that Toshiba made. And much like the CDI, there's a few different versions by each company that actually produced them. And the difference, though, is the CDI, despite all the jokes that are made about it, was actually a success. It actually did produce money. It actually was around for quite a long time. The Nuon was not. It was just a DVD player that had some additional capabilities to play games that were programmed for it. The problem is, as far as I understand, only 6 games were ever made for this thing. Most well known is there's a version of Tempest on here that everybody really likes. But aside from that, there's really nothing on there. Now, I can't really do anything with it, though. All it came with is the unit and the remote control. The power supply is very standard. It's got standard component output, so it's not a problem to connect it. It's just that I can't really do anything with it because I don't own any of the games. And I actually looked into this. This particular model specifically does not support burning any versions of games, and there are models that do. So I can't test this without a legitimate game. I mean, certainly I could put a DVD in it or a music CD and have that run, but what is the point of that? So at the moment, I'm sitting on a Nuon with absolutely nothing I can play or use on it. So I'm hoping at some point down the road I find some Nuon games for cheap, which is highly unlikely, as I don't think I've ever even seen one before. But who knows? You never know what kind of random stuff you'll encounter, obviously. So yeah, that'll about do it here, guys. If you guys could please like, comment, subscribe, and all that great stuff, I appreciate it. Thank you very much to all the guys at the Missouri Game Con. Thank you to the guys over at Coffee Slut. Thank you to my buddy Mikkel. Thank you, of course, to Kurt, again, who's at Missouri Game Con. It's Chuck specifically, because he just lots of cool stuff here. My buddy Jake for everything he did down there. Thank you guys very much for watching, and if you guys could hit all the social stuff in the description, Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, all that crap, it's all down there. Please check it out. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all later.